In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create a space scene like this in which you have a spaceship flying through space and firing some lasers. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll just create a new project and I'm going to import my footage. I can double click this gray area in project or do a file import or Command I or Control I on Windows. And I'm going to pull in this footage, right click it and say new comp from selection. I'm not going to need the sound on that, so I'm going to turn that sound off. And I need to find where I want this clip to start and end. It kind of goes out of focus there, so let me back up a little bit and figure this out. Hit play, and all I did is I placed this model on the green screen and trucked the camera in on the model to give it this sense that it is moving forward. So let's say I found my in point where I want it to start. I'm going to pull in my work area bar, and then I'm going to go to my end point for this shot and move my work area bar. So that's the only section that I need. Then go to composition, trim comp to work area bar. So that is the shot, fairly simple. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to key out this green screen. In order to do that, I'm going to type key and look for Keylight 1.2 and drag that to my clip. To key it out, I can click the eyedropper, select the background, and it becomes transparent. Looks like it's not perfect. I'm going to view this as a combined matte. So what is white is showing through, what is black is completely transparent. So I might increase my screen gain a little bit and adjust this. Now this would be dependent upon your clip, and I'm going to go to my screen matte and maybe start to clip this a little bit and fix. So again, it would depend on your particular clip. Then I'm going to go ahead and view this as final result, and I think for the most part this will work for this quick tutorial. So I've got my ship moving forward. The only thing I need to do for that, if I just wanted to have it moving forward in space, is add the stars. So I'll go back to the beginning of time for this clip. I'm going to create a new solid. For this one, I'm going to call this stars, and I'm going to make it a kind of a pale blue. So my stars are a little bit blue. Now for the size for this, I'm going to make this 10,000 by 10,000. I want it bigger than my original clip, and my original clip is 4K, and I want this bigger than that. When I first created it, it went above my ship, so I'm going to go ahead and put it underneath. And then I'm going to apply an effect to this background. And I'll tell you why in a moment, why I created that layer larger than my source footage. I'm going to type in stars, or star, that is, and get this under simulation starburst. And I'm going to add that to my stars layer. If I hit play, you'll notice that it doesn't really work. My stars are moving toward me and my ship is moving toward me, which doesn't make sense. So here I can make some adjustments, and I'm not going to need to keyframe any of that. But the starburst always is in the center of the clip, and it doesn't have a point that I can move around. So that's why I created a larger clip, but I'll get into that in a little while. So I'm going to take the speed, and instead of being positive in speed, I'm going to make it negative. I'm going to make it negative 0.2, and now it's going to be receding away. And I think that works. The other thing I'm going to do now is this background. It's not perfectly behind my ship. This represents the center of my background clip. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to move that there. Now my star field is actually going to be moving from that point, because this does not allow you to change the center. So by making the clip really large, then it is actually larger than my source footage for my spaceship, and then I can just adjust where I have that taking place from. And I think that is a little bit more dynamic that way. So I have my star field. I suppose if you wanted to, you could be done. I'm going to add a little bit of motion to this ship. So I'm going to select my ship layer, and I'm going to go to transform. I'm going to turn the stopwatch on for rotation. I'm going to go forward in time, and then I'm going to rotate a little bit. Maybe I'll have it rotate about like that. And then I'm going to move that keyframe to the end of the clip. So now it's not only moving in, but it's also rotating a little bit with that animation. Next thing I'm going to do is add the laser blast. In order to do that, I'm going to create a new layer, solid, and in here, this solid, the color doesn't really matter because I'll be adding a beam effect, but for this, I'm going to make it 4096 by 2160. And the color doesn't matter for this one, but I'm making it the size of my source footage. Now, it went on top of it. That is where I want it, my laser footage. I'm going to hit enter for this, and actually I should have called this laser. And then I'm going to be adding the beam effect in my effects and presets. I'll grab that beam, drop it on there, and let me explain how this beam effect works. Here's my starting point, here's my ending point, and if I want to change where it starts and ends, I can adjust it with those. Right now I'm looking at it at 25% in length and at 50% time. Let me change the time to 0 so it has its origin at its starting point at 0 time, and then if I were to be at 100% time, it would go to my ending point. But I'm going to go ahead and reset that, and I need to set my starting and ending points. For this, I am going to need to keyframe it because my spaceship is moving and I want that laser to follow with the ship. So I'm going to turn on my starting point. I'm going to leave my ending point off for this particular shot, but I'm just going to clock the starting point. And then I'm going to take that starting point and I'm going to put it where I want it to have its origin from. Now for this particular clip, it would be starting at that point in time. I'm actually going to shift this over just a little bit so my laser won't appear until my shot has been moving for a little while. Okay, it's over a little bit. My starting point, I'm going to bring up that crosshairs and bring it up about right there. So now I've got the right starting point. The ending point can be anywhere. I'm going to move it off screen though. I can zoom out a little bit, move it off screen. So it's going to end off screen. Now I'm not in the ending of time there, but that's where it is going to end. So at this point in time, it's going to start here and then later it's going to end there. I'm going to need to adjust the starting thickness and ending thickness so that it has a little bit of perspective. You'll notice that it is changing a little bit in length, but we'll be adjusting that later. And then you can also just take that time and see what it would look like if it were firing. So you can kind of plan it out. And you're going to adjust the keyframes when it happens later. So I'll take my time and put it at 0. And then I'm going to turn the stopwatch on for time for this laser clip. Then I'm going to go further in time. And because my ship moved a little bit, that starting point is going to change just a little bit. I'm going to go a little bit further in time. And then I'm going to take that starting point and put it here. So my starting point is shifting over time as my ship moves. I'm going to expand this so I can see those keyframes. So starting point, and then it's going to, as the ship moves, the laser is going to continue with it. So next thing I'm going to do is zoom out here and see, well, how long is this laser blast going to last? And I'm going to take that and make it at 100% for the time. So as the ship moves forward, that laser blast is firing there. Now, if I don't like where that ending point is, I can always change it. Zoom out a little bit. Maybe I'm going to move that a little bit more this way. Because I didn't turn the clock on for the ending point, that doesn't really matter. And then I'm going to take a look at that and see, well, does that look any better? I think it looks better. What I think it looks, though, is a little bit slow for the laser. So all I need to do is take that time and shrink it. And then the ending or the starting point doesn't really need to change. But now it's going with that in time. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to expand this just so I can shrink this a little bit. So I don't need all of that extra stuff. I know I had shifted it over, so I'm just going to go ahead and split this layer. I'm going to dump that. I don't need that extra. And I want this to flash a moment when the laser fires, and then after it flashes a little bit, then I want to see the laser blast. So I'm going to create another layer, new layer, solid. And for this one, I will make it a black layer, and it is 4096 by 2160 as 4K, and I'm going to call this one flash. So I'm going to see a flash of light. And I'm going to shrink this a little bit. I'm going to have it start a little bit before my laser, and then I'm going to shrink it, and it can actually be shorter than my laser clip. And it is, you see, notice that it just goes black because it's on the top of it. But I'm going to look for the lens flare, and I'm going to drag the lens flare to my flash layer. And now I'm not seeing it over my ship. I'm going to switch to modes, so you can click modes here, and I'm going to change this to screen. And now I will see it over the background. I know it's in the wrong place. I'm going to handle that later. But I'm also going to take my laser layer and change its blending mode. I'm going to change it to add. I think it will blend in a little bit more with the background. And again, you can shift the starting and ending thickness as you see fit if you want to change how it looks with perspective. So going back to my lens flare layer, I need to set its starting point. So I'm going to click the the lens flare, the flare center. Where do I want it to start in time? Now it's a little bit bright, so I'm going to back up some on that a little bit because it's just going to be a little bit of a flash. And that's giving me an idea what it will look like. But I'm going to turn the flare brightness clock on. I'm going to take the flare brightness to 0. I'm going to go forward in time just a little bit when that laser starts. And then I'm going to take that flare brightness up. And then I'm going to go forward in time and then take that flare brightness to 0. So what will happen is I will get a flash of light when that fires. And that's kind of the basics to it. Now if I wanted to add more, the simplest way to do this would be to select these 2 layers and do a Command D or Control D if you're on Windows. Move these forward, and now I've got it firing, and it's going to be firing again. Now I will need to adjust the starting point, and then I could also adjust the ending points to have this change where it is firing. So if I wanted to do that, I'm going to grab this one and take a look. Okay, I can clearly see that the starting point is wrong, so I'm going to go ahead and fix that. And I need to select that laser layer and go to my starting point. Make sure I'm at the origin of it, starting point, and I'm going to put it right there in the middle of the ship. And I can see that my lens flare is also off. I can also adjust that. Now, if it moved a lot, I would need to move that flare center, but because it's so close and it's only up there really briefly, that's not going to matter, the distance that it's traveling. So back to my laser. Now it's brightening up but my end point is in the wrong place. I want it to end somewhere else. So actually I'm going to zoom out even a bit more, and I'm going to go to my ending point and see, well, where does it currently end? It currently ends over there. Let's say for this one I want it to end over here. Expand that and take a look at that beam effect. And so I've changed that ending point. So it'll fire like that. So let's go ahead and take a look at that whole thing. Now there hasn't been any Foley added to this, but if you wanted to do that, sometimes we just believe that there is sound in space even though there isn't. And that's kind of a real basic way that you can do this. Now before I made a final output, I would probably do some color correction, but this is just about the basics of how to create a space scene, the simple model, and the beam effect. So go ahead and tell some good stories.